Hello and welcome to English for Immigrants, the channel that helps immigrants learn real-life English in a simple and practical way. Learning English as an immigrant can be a journey full of challenges, but also many achievements. One of the most important aspects for those starting to communicate in English is understanding that making mistakes is part of the process. However, some mistakes are so common among immigrants that it is worth knowing and correcting them to accelerate learning and communicate with more clarity and confidence. In this video, we will talk about those mistakes that often appear in the speech and writing of people learning English in the United States or any other English-speaking country. One of the first mistakes many immigrants make is related to direct translation from their native language to English. This is a natural mistake, as the brain tends to use the language they already master as a reference to build sentences in a new language. The problem is that each language has its own structures, and often, translating word by word leads to constructions that sound strange or even incorrect to native speakers. For example, many Brazilians have the habit of saying, "I have 30 years," when they want to say their age. This phrase is a direct translation of "Eu tenho 30 anos," but in English, the correct form is "I am 30 years old," because in English, age is tied to the verb to be and not the verb to have. Another very common mistake involves the use of verb tenses, especially the present perfect and the simple past. These two tenses cause confusion because in many languages, like Portuguese, the usage is different. In English, the present perfect is used to talk about experiences or actions that started in the past and still have relevance in the present. For example, I have lived in New York for 5 years. This verb tense shows that the person started living in New York in the past and still lives there. However, many immigrants say, "I lived in New York for 5 years," when they want to refer to something that is still happening, which can confuse the listener and alter the meaning of the sentence. Learning the difference between these verb tenses is essential for more accurate communication. In addition, many immigrants use pronouns incorrectly. This may seem like a small detail, but it makes a big difference in communication clarity. A frequent example is the incorrect use of he and she. This happens mainly with people from languages where grammatical genders are different, such as Spanish or Portuguese. In English, it is essential to use the correct pronoun to avoid misunderstandings. Saying, "She is my brother," instead of "he is my brother," can cause immediate confusion. These mistakes are usually made impulsively, especially when trying to speak quickly, but it is important to be mindful of them and adjust over time. The word order in sentences is also a common trap. In English, the basic structure is subject plus verb plus object. It seems simple, but often, due to the influence of the mother tongue, immigrants end up changing this order. An example would be saying "is raining" instead of "it is raining." The absence of the subject "it" may seem natural to someone who speaks Portuguese, for example, where it is common to simply say "está chovendo." In English, however, the subject must be present. Even if the subject doesn't refer to anything specific, as in the case of "it is raining," it must be present for the sentence to be correct. Another important point is pronunciation. Many immigrants first learn English in writing and then try to speak. This can lead to mispronunciations of very common words. A classic example is the word vegetables, which many people pronounce as v-g, e-t-ble, separating all the syllables. The correct pronunciation is closer to vej-bu-buhls. The same happens with words like comfortable, which sounds like comfortable, and February, often pronounced as feb-u-air-e. Learning to listen and imitate the pronunciation of native speakers is a crucial part of the process of becoming more fluent and understood. In addition to pronunciation, the rhythm and intonation of sentences also play a part in fluency. Many immigrants tend to speak English with the intonation of their native language, which can sound strange to native listeners. This is not exactly a mistake, but it can affect how the message is received. In English, intonation typically rises at the end of questions and falls at the end of statements. Learning these patterns helps not only to be understood, but also to sound more natural. Another frequent mistake is the use of prepositions. Prepositions in English don't always follow a clear logic for those learning the language. Many immigrants confuse in, on, and at. For example, it is common to hear someone say, "I am in the bus," instead of "I am on the bus." The correct preposition in this case is on, because it refers to being inside a means of public transport. Similarly, many say, "I will see you in Friday," when the correct phrase is "on Friday." Mastering the correct use of prepositions requires practice and constant exposure to the language. False cognates also cause many misunderstandings. These are words that look the same in two languages but have different meanings. A classic example is the word actually, which many translate as actualmente. In fact, actually means in fact, and the correct word for actualmente is currently. Another example is pretend, which doesn't mean pretender, but rather to fake. These mistakes may seem small, but in a real conversation, they completely change the meaning of what someone is trying to say. Furthermore, many immigrants avoid using contractions like I'm, you're, they're, always preferring to use the full form like I am or they are. While this is not technically wrong, it sounds very formal or even artificial in everyday conversations. Using contractions makes speech more natural and helps to integrate better into conversations with natives. Avoiding contractions is a habit that can be let go as the person gains more confidence in the language. Another point to consider is the use of some and any. Many immigrants get confused when choosing which one to use. Some is generally used in affirmative sentences like, "I have some friends," while any is more common in questions and negatives like, "Do you have any friends?" or "I don't have any friends." Using these words in the wrong context may not hinder understanding, but it shows that the person is still adapting to the language. In addition to the grammatical aspects, another common mistake is not practicing English outside the classroom. Many immigrants are afraid of making mistakes, so they avoid speaking with natives or using English in everyday situations. This is perhaps the biggest mistake of all. English is a living language, and the best way to learn is to expose yourself to it all the time. Talking with coworkers, participating in community events, watching movies, and listening to music in English are ways to learn the language naturally. The fear of making mistakes should not be greater than the desire to learn. It is also important to avoid relying too much on translation apps. While they are useful tools, it is easy to become dependent on them and stop trying to think in English. One of the best ways to improve your English is precisely to try to think directly in the language without translating. This requires practice and patience, but it is an essential step to achieving fluency. Another common mistake is trying to learn everything at once. English has many rules, exceptions, and vocabulary. It's normal to want to speed up the process, but learning needs to be gradual. Focusing on learning a group of words or a structure at a time is more effective than trying to master everything at once. Consistency is more important than speed. Finally, many immigrants don't take advantage of the free resources available to study English. There are YouTube channels like English for Immigrants, which offer content specifically designed for those going through this process. In addition, there are apps, podcasts, books, and online communities where it's possible to practice. Studying alone can be difficult, but with the right tools, everything becomes easier and even fun. Correcting these mistakes takes time, but the important thing is to keep practicing, paying attention to details, and above all, not giving up. Learning English as an immigrant is a journey of overcoming challenges, adapting, and personal growth. Every mistake corrected is another step toward fluency. So, if you identified with any of these mistakes, don't worry. You're on the right path. Recognizing the areas that need attention is already half the battle. Keep practicing, listening, reading, and most importantly, speaking English whenever you can. Confidence and fluency come with time and practice. And we, here at the English for Immigrants channel, are with you every step of the way. So, subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment if you liked our story today, and share this video with someone. So, until the next video.